Hello and welcome to Bonkers For Boro, the podcast with me, Phil Spencer. It's a brand new show which is going to be on the Bonkers For Boro YouTube channel and on the leading streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple, anywhere where you're going to be getting your podcasts, and we're going to be chatting all things Middlesbrough Football Club. So if you are interested in this, then please do hit like, please do hit subscribe, hit follow, rate and review, all of the above, everything that you sort of need to do, because the hope will be that we can continue this podcast for a little while and really bring you the latest news to the pockets of Middlesbrough football fans. Now, in this episode, the very first one, we're going to be catching up with Craig Johns from Teesside Live. There's a lot to discuss with regards to Middlesbrough's push for promotion, that gut-wrenching 1-1 draw against Bristol City, and the conundrum facing Kim Hellberg as he looks to find a solution to Middlesbrough's attacking woes, particularly at the Riverside Stadium. I think with the promotion battle really starting to heat up, with Millwall and Ipswich really clipping at our heels at the moment, it does feel like we do need to find a solution for it. And I was asking Craig what his views were on the back of that 1-1 draw at Bristol City and the impact that it could have on Middlesbrough's dressing room moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those kind of cruel moments in football, isn't it? You look at, like, it's now 4 games at home without a win, and I think realistically you can say Middlesbrough deserve to win all 4 of those games. 4 teams who realistically came with minimal ambition to do much more than frustrate Borough and hope to get something on the counter. And finally it looked like Middlesbrough were going to get that home win. They were going to put all the the questions to bed, get that massive home win, and it would have been a big home win, and it would have been in some style as well, because it was a fantastic Leo Castledine goal. To then concede like they did in the 96th minute. I mean, the silence in the Riverside as that ball hit the back of the net, it was eerie. I think everybody just kind of in that split second just realised, what had just happened and the potential implications. As you see, thankfully, results elsewhere meant it wasn't as costly as it could have been. But yeah, I think you look at the 4 home games really, and you think that's 9 points dropped in 4 home games now, and when you consider that every team around them has been dropping points, it's more of a missed opportunity and a frustration than anything too costly, because we could be sitting here, and we probably should be sitting here right now talking about a team that are 2 points clear at the top of the championship. And what would that be? Can't do the quick maths, but however many points clear of third place Ipswich. Realistically, with this amount of games to play, if Middlesbrough had those 9 extra points in the bag, they'd have 1 foot in the Premier League. I think that would be fair to say. But this Middlesbrough, we never do things the easy way, do we? And unfortunately, there woulda, coulda, shouldas, and we are where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And of course it was that last minute equaliser which was the real sucker punch. But I think the main takeaway for a lot of supporters, as it has been for a lot of the home matches over the last few weeks, has been Middlesbrough's lack of potency in front of goal, our inability to put the ball in the back of the net. Yes, we've been creating a huge amount of chances. I think I totted it up in the press room after the match. I was chatting with Scott from the Northern Echo, and I think I totted it up as like 91 shots. I think it was that we'd had over the 4 home games. Which is ridiculous, really, considering the amount of goals that we actually managed. So Middlesbrough's attacking woes, the fact that we're unable to put it in the back of the net. So what do you make of it, Craig? What's the sort of what's your kind of verdict on it with regards to the amount of chances that we're creating and the fact that we're not able to put it in the back of the net, and the sort of dominance versus actual results of the matches that we're sort of battling with at the moment?
Yeah, I think you used the word ridiculous, and that's exactly what it is, isn't it? I think I totted it up as 94 over the 4 home games, which, I mean, my maths isn't great, so I'll trust you on 91. But you also, it depends where you look as well, don't you? Different outlets have different amounts, but yeah, so it'll be over 90 shots that Middlesbrough have had over the course of these last 4 home games, and okay, not all 90 of those chances are clear-cut, really good chances, but enough of them in every game were. Obviously, on Saturday, you've got Tommy Conway's early header from close range, which he puts over the bar. David Strelek's at 1-0, which he absolutely has to score, running through one-on-one. Any good striker needs to take that opportunity. And then you had 2 from Alan Brown as well. His header from just outside the 6-yard box, which he was open and he headed straight at VTech. And then, of course, the big one, the open goal. And to be fair to Alan Brown, he's not naturally a goal scorer. He's not a striker, but he has this season been popping up in those areas and grabbing big goals for Borough. So you'd have banked on him, particularly the rebounded one, the one that he hit straight into Vitek's legs when the rest of the goal was at his mercy. You'd have banked on Brown this season to have put that in the back of the net, and it just sums up Borough's luck at the minute, really, that none of those chances went in, and arguably the hardest clear-cut chance that they had of the day, the Castledine one, was the one that he put away, 20-year-old as well. So maybe something to learn from him in that moment. But nice to see for him as well. Obviously coming to Borough after a brilliant season at Huddersfield and then getting injured quite quickly would have obviously been a big blow for him. But nice to see him kind of get back from injury and kind of pick up where he left off, really. So I thought he had an impressive start before his injury. But I mean, in terms of Middlesbrough's goal wars, it's such a frustrating one. They clearly had a lot of faith and a lot of belief in Strelec when they brought him to the club, a championship club who isn't getting parachute payments, don't pay 6.5 million for a player they aren't really convinced on. And of course, it wasn't just Middlesbrough, Celtic and many other clubs around Europe and South America were interested and keen on Strelec. So clearly there's a talent there, but for whatever reason, he's struggling to unlock it. Although I will say, I thought in general his performance was quite positive when he came off the bench on Saturday. He didn't set it up, but he played a big part in the goal. And I think a lot of the times, if you watch him, he's got really good movement, really quite clever with his movement, never given a defender much time to settle and much kind of idea of which way he's going to go. He's always making different movements, which makes it quite hard. But the difficulty is at the moment, he's not really connected with his teammates, and they're not picking him out as often as maybe they should as well. So, but yeah, there's no getting away from the fact he has to score that chance. It's 2-0 with 82 minutes on the clock, and Borough have the 3 points in the bag at that point, so that's massive. And Conway as well, it's such a frustrating one because I'll make no apologies for saying I'm one of his biggest fans. I love his character off the pitch. I think he's a really strong and really driven and determined character, really, really engaging to talk to. On the pitch, I love his work ethic. I love how much he gives Borough in general. And I think you definitely notice it when he's not there. You notice his absence. But he hasn't been scoring this season as much as he needs to. And again, that's such a frustration. Last season, he got 13 goals, and throughout a big period of the season, he was scoring at a rate of better than one every 90 minutes. So it's in him. It is in him, but for whatever reason, this season it hasn't been going for him. And strikers are often confidence players. It's we should probably remember Tommy Conway is still only 23 years old. He's still a young striker. He's still a young player. And I know we have a tendency to do it as fans sometimes and write players off, but I don't by any means think that, Tommy Conway has suddenly lost all the ability that he's previously had. He got 12 goals for Bristol City in the previous 2 campaigns. And as I say, we're talking about at that stage, 20, 21-year-old striker. So, clearly there is a lot of talent and a lot of potential with Tommy Conway. For whatever reason this season, it just isn't quite clicking for him. And yeah, it's a tough one for Kim Hellberg because how much can you really do? Everything bar that putting the ball in the back of the net is right, is looks good. When they're away from home, they're doing that, and when they're at home, for whatever reason, they're just not. And yeah, it's frustrating.
It definitely is frustrating, and I think frustrated is putting it mildly for what Kim Hellberg was feeling. I mean, we were both in that post-match press conference on Saturday after the Bristol City match, and Kim Hellberg came in. I know that obviously you've been in a few of these over the last few weeks, but to say that he was frustrated was a huge understatement. I mean, you could pretty much see the steam coming out of his ears with how frustrated he was at what had happened. I mean, it was a really quite interesting press conference, actually, wasn't it? Because he was coming out and he was overwhelmingly positive about his players, and he was saying that the performance was, I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly what the word was, but he was basically saying that Middlesbrough were amazing on the day, that our build-up play was excellent, the way that we're dominating teams, not just in this game, but in previous games as well, is just absolutely incredible. We're an incredible group of players, we're one of the best teams in the league, all of these sorts of things. But of course, results aren't going our way. That's 4 home games in a row that we failed to win. So How frustrated is he, Craig? And what can he actually do about this? Because in his defence, he has got Middlesbrough really well coached. We are creating all of these chances. We just can't put the bloody thing in the back of the net. So what does he actually do to solve this problem?
Yeah, it's the difficult thing, isn't it? Because we're not in a transfer window. We haven't got a transfer window coming up, so there's nothing you can do in terms of bringing somebody else in. He's got what he's got to work with, and he's got to try and make that work. And as you see it, everything in terms of how they look as a team, the chances to create. And I think at times we've probably oversimplified it by saying they can't break down a low block. And when we say that, we don't necessarily mean getting through the low block and create chances. They are clearly creating plenty of chances against the low block, just in general, not scoring. And when you are playing a low block and you're maybe not getting, loads and loads of clear-cut chances, the clear-cut chances you do get, which Borough creating, they have to take, and they're not. And that's a difficulty for Kim Hellberg, because what is the answer? He spoke after the game on Saturday about trying to draw Bristol City out and then hit them in that moment, because obviously it is tough if you're playing against a team with 10 defenders or 10 men, 10 even sometimes 11 men behind the ball. It's tough to find the space that you need to get in behind and get a clear-cut chance. But clearly Borough are managing to do that, and did manage to do that against Bristol City. And he mentioned some of the work that they've done in the build-up of the game about trying to draw Bristol City out and giving them a bit of confidence, and then hitting them on the counter with pace. So, clearly he is working on little minor tactical tweaks like that to try and get the smallest of kind of advantages and the smallest of margins to turn in Borough's favour. And that's one of the big things I think that offers encouragement with Kim Hellberg. Is I think we all know by now in the kind of 3 or 4 months or so that he's been in charge now, how analytical he is, and how kind of intelligent he is when it comes to reading a game of football. So clearly he's going to have loads of ideas, and he's going to be looking at every single tiny, minute detail to find out, what ultimately can be changed to get this going. But I don't think you're talking about, root and branch changes. I think when you're looking at how Middlesbrough are playing, how they're dominating games, that's how Middlesbrough, want to look as a team. That's how I imagine most fans will want Middlesbrough to look. But ultimately in football, you also want to win games of football, and if you're not putting the ball in the back of the net, you're not going to win games of football. So what can he do, really? As I say, he's working with the players he's got, and that's that's what he's going to have to deal with. And that's why I think ultimately he's not coming out and he's not panning his strikers or anything. I think we all know that they're underperforming, and ultimately, if you're being brutally honest, they have to do better. They need to do better if they want to have a future at the football club, as a football club that has high ambitions to get to the Premier League and to stay in the Premier League. Then whether it's Strelec, Conway, Sen, whoever it is, they have to perform better and more consistently if they want to be a part of Middlesbrough's future. And but in the moment, that's what he's got to work with, and he's got to have them as confident as they can. As I say, I think confidence is a massive thing. I think when you look at Conway's record throughout his career so far, I think that would clearly indicate that right now there is a player who's suffering a bit of a crisis in confidence when it comes to scoring goals. At least I don't think it's necessarily impacted his general overall game. And it was interesting, he did an interview with Sky ahead of one of the previous games. I can't remember which one, but he was talking then about learning that as a striker in the modern game, goal scoring isn't everything. You've got to do so much more to your game. You're judged on goals. You want to score goals, of course you do, but there's more to your game that you need to have, particularly in a Kim Hellberg side, than just scoring goals. So yeah, in that element of his game, I think absolutely fine. But we need someone to step forward and start scoring goals on a regular basis, start putting the chances away that Middlesbrough are creating. And I think from Kim Hellberg's point of view, the only thing he can really do is try and instill as much belief into them as possible. I don't know whether that's obviously that will be in his communication with them and he's chatting with them and making sure they know how highly he rates them. But, whether or not on the training ground, I've spoken to ex-players in the past who've spoken about when they've gone through barren goal spells that sometimes just being on the training ground and just shooting a lot and the ball in the back of the net. Yes, it's not replicating exactly what happens in a match. You're not under pressure from defenders. You haven't got the crowd with that expectation around you and whatnot. But nevertheless, just getting that feeling on the training pitch, just taking an hour and just taking as many shots as you possibly can in an hour, and get that feeling of wrapping your boot around the ball and seeing that ball fly in the back of the net could sometimes, just be something that you need for a bit of a psychological boost, if nothing else. Whatever the answer is, I'm sure Kim Hellberg will be, desperately trying to find it in this next week leading up to the Blackburn game.
Mm-hmm. And so how does he manage, but how does the Middlesbrough team manage the expectations that are around the club at the moment? Because obviously, we all know at the start of the season, I don't think anyone expected us to be in this position. So I think there is like a degree of perspective that needs to be here. I mean, I did a pre-season prediction video, and I thought it was going to be mid-table, maybe top 10, based on how we were last season and some of the business that we did in the summer. Of course, we're now in the top 2 still at the time of recording. We're still in the top 2, and with a really good chance of going up automatically. But fans, of course, their expectations rise as the season goes on. We've been in the top 2 since November, I think it is. So expectations do naturally rise. So what does Kim Hellberg and what do the players need to do in order to manage those sort of fan expectations? Because of course that's what adds to the pressure cooker that is this time of the season in a promotion race, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything they can do. Ultimately, the expectations are so high because of how good they've been up to this point in the season. And, now we're at as you say, the business end. There's 8 games to go. Borough are sitting second, and there's a very real opportunity to go and get promoted for the first time in 10 years. So I don't think there's going to be any managing of that expectation. I think the players just need to step up and manage the expectation within themselves. But I don't think they can expect the fans to not be expectant and to not be looking at that table and thinking we've got to go and do this now, because realistically and the one thing I think, if you are a supporter, the way you can help is to have that perspective though, and to understand that perspective in terms of nobody thought they would be here. They are now though, and now there's that opportunity which they should take. It isn't a case of let's hope they take it. It's they should take it. In terms of how you can help, it's the extreme highs and the extreme lows is where the fans could maybe temper that a little bit, and many do. I appreciate that. There's always a vocal few on social media, but players clearly say that as well. Players clearly are on social media. We know that. We know Finn has cited it as one of the reasons why he wanted to leave the club. Clearly the players are seeing this, and the players are getting involved in this. Yeah, but I think extreme reactions after defeat. I think when you look at it from probably the turn of the year, nothing much has changed in the league table. Middlesbrough have dropped points, but so have Millwall, so have Coventry, so have Ipswich. And because of that, nothing much has changed. And yes, we hyper focus on Middlesbrough, and yes, it's frustrating because Middlesbrough could be in such a better position than what they ultimately are because of the drop points. But the fact of the matter is, this is the Championship. Teams don't just win every game and go all the way. And I guarantee within the next 8 games, Middlesbrough will drop points, but so will Ipswich and so will Millwall. And you've just got to try and ride that roller coaster, and hopefully nothing too extreme in terms of emotions. It's frustrating, it's disappointing. I mean, that last minute goal against Bristol City at the weekend, it was sickening. There was a minute where I had to, obviously so late in the game, you have to update the blog, you have to update social media, you then have to completely rewrite your match report. But it took me a minute before I could actually just compose myself to go again, because it was absolutely flattening. It was sickening when that goal went in. But yeah, you've just got to try and manage it, haven't you, as supporters, and get behind and help the team as much as they can. And to be fair, in the ground, I think generally that was fine on Saturday. I think Berg said it himself, didn't he? That he felt the fans were really good on Saturday, and it's probably been building, but I think the first half was a result of a kind of nervous energy that was just around everyone from the previous home games. But to be fair, the fans stuck with them, and in the second half, it was much better, and that's when they created the bulk of the chances that they did create in that second half. So yeah, I think it's just needing to just continue getting behind them really, and just giving them as much help as they possibly can get.
Mm-hmm. And so this weekend we've got obviously it's the next chapter in the promotion race. Middlesbrough heading to face Blackburn Rovers on the weekend. It's going to be that's Saturday lunchtime. It's also going to be really interesting because Ipswich and Millwall, Middlesbrough's two closest competitors for automatic promotion, play each other on a Saturday lunchtime as well. So it's going to be another really pivotal weekend really in terms of the promotion race. So how do you see the weekend playing out? How do you think Middlesbrough go about attacking this game?
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing is that it's away from home, isn't it? And away from home, Middlesbrough, for whatever reason, seem to be, perhaps it is that kind of expectation and nervous energy around the Riverside, which is natural at this stage of the season. But for whatever reason, they've just got a bit more freedom and a bit more about them away from home at the moment. And be an interesting game. Blackburn, before the weekend, I was looking at Blackburn and thinking they're banging trouble. They were in really bad form. West Brom, Oxford and Leicester, you felt were going to start picking up a few points, and we're starting to pick up a good few points. And yeah, Blackburn were in terrible form, bad injuries to the squad and whatnot. And then they go and do Borough a massive favour and beat Millwall, which again it emphasises the point I just made. Although we hyper focus on Borough and the points they're dropping, the fact of the matter is, all the competitors, all the rivals for that top two spot are also have their own deficiencies, and they also have their own weaknesses, and they're also dropping points, and that was a perfect example of it, because had Millwall beaten Blackburn at the Den on Saturday, they'd be sitting second right now and would feel even worse as Borough fans, but we don't, and so we go to Blackburn. I don't think Borough have the best of records against Blackburn either, really, do we? But nevertheless, they're vulnerable. Middlesbrough seem to like playing away from home, and from what I can gather, the mood, despite of it a good win at the Den against Millwall, the mood around that football club doesn't feel very good at the moment. I think I'm right in saying that the local paper is still banned, which is never a good sign. The owners are not really, favourable among supporters, and the people running the day-to-day, kind of running of the club. Rudy Gestede being one of them, they're not too favourable among supporters either. So it just feels like a bit of a toxic environment for the home side. So if Middlesbrough can go there, get on top early, then by all accounts, I don't think Blackburn get too many in the ground even these days, but those that are there are likely going to turn quite quickly, and again, that can work in Borough's favour. You've got to be wary because they're going to be on a bit of a high after that Millwall win, but ultimately you've got to take advantage of what is a pretty vulnerable side at the moment.
So that was Craig Johns chatting about Middlesbrough's hopes of securing promotion this season. And of course, like we said, we've got a really important game coming up against Blackburn Rovers this week. And it's going to be an interesting one which could play into Middlesbrough's hands. Playing away from home, confidence is low with Blackburn. And for Middlesbrough, having that freedom of playing away from home could be exactly what we need to do. So this has been the first ever Bonkers For Boro podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe. If you're on the YouTube channel, if you're on Spotify or any of the other podcast providers, then do hit follow. Please rate and review as well if you have enjoyed this as well. And hopefully we will we'll catch up with you next time after what we'll hope will be a Middlesbrough win. Catch you later.